All right, it is Thursday, September 11th, 2025, and the Pre-K 8 School Building Committee is meeting this evening to discuss the Pre-K 8 options. Before we move on, I would like to note that this is the 4th anniversary of 9/11, and I would like to observe a moment of silence. Thank you. All right, moving on to item 2. Approving the minutes from August 12th and August 26th.
So I was late sending those out. I just sent them out right before we started tonight for the amendments, but Mark, I got yours. I incorporated all that into there. And then I fixed the naming that was wrong. So it says Gene Carmelik and not whatever I had written originally. So I believe all adjustments have been made to the 12th meeting minutes. So I'd like to move that we approve those as amended.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Yeah.
All those in favor?
We need, no, everybody's physically here, so we're okay to do, we don't need to do a roll call.
Okay. All right, so the August 12th minutes are approved. Any status on the August 26th minutes?
So answer is yes. It turns out we didn't create the written or the text format output. It was video, so I had to translate that through something online. So I have a PDF of it.
Okay,
I just haven't done any scrubbing on it. So
okay,
get access.
So- we'll look forward to that.
Yes, it's a work in progress.
Okay, excellent. And as I believe when we first began meeting, we agreed that there would be a revolving minute taker. Do I have anyone who has not taken minutes yet to volunteer? Anyone else goes? You want to give it a stab and you can send the draft to me?
I'll give it a stab.
Okay. Thank you, Howard.
Howard, I'll set you up with the, I'll set you up with a file. That way you can start on something reasonable.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any public comments, either first here in person? Seeing none to the very crowded right side of the room.
No online.
None online? Okay, all right, no public comment this evening. So now I'd like to turn the meeting over to Al Hamilton, and I believe it's Michael New.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael.
Yeah,
And Al.
we have a way to get access to that screen.
Yeah, are you in the meeting
We
right
were
now?
logged on to the network.
I'm on the network, but I'm not.
The other option is, I think you can come over to this guy here and use this fancy adapter if you can plug in.
Yeah.
You need an application called Airtame. And you can
So we,
wirelessly.
Okay, I don't have that, so.
The survey, which we did over about a 3 or 4 week period at the end of July and early August, netted just under 800 respondents. And I presented the very preliminary analysis to the select board. I did have Mike, who is vastly better at noodling numbers than I am, and that was my analysis, but I decided to go straight to the source for the guy who knows how to work the pivot tables better than I can. And so Mike's going to just sort of walk you through what the survey says. It's a pretty consistent message.
Let's see. This one, share. Oh, that's setting that I need to handle. I think I need to fix this.
I can send a copy of the slides to you from my town email if they don't.
No, this should. Here is maybe. Why not just unplug and plug it back in? Sure. This is interesting. You can see it doing it, it's on
There's a
here.
sharing key there.
Do you have a second screen?
I do, yeah, it thinks I have a second screen, yeah.
Yeah, is it showing up with that? You're gonna change that to duplicate?
Um. Would it be easier if I just logged into the meeting on Zoom?
Yeah, if you want to, I can make you.
Yeah, what is the, what's the?
It's just on the town website and then click on remote meetings. Make sure your audio is off when you join.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay, so then you should have sharing capability, if not, I'll give it to you. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, thank you all for having me here. I'm gonna try and keep this sort of brief. I've only got a few, like 7 or 8 slides here. Before I start, I want to point out that, what I'm gonna present are sort of the narrative points that I found most, sort of salient from looking at the data. But it's far from comprehensive, and, you may have other questions or other like ways of looking at the data that you might like to see, and, we can follow up with that or whatever is most helpful. But this is kind of, I think, a useful sort of tour through what the data sort of says. So as Al pointed out, so we had just under 800 respondents to the survey. And even after, quality controlling some of the responses, I think we were still down to at least about 700, which is a pretty robust number. The big points that I found that as I went through it were that, the survey was roughly representative by age. There was some skew and some overrepresentation, but not much, and certainly within a reasonable approximation of what I think the town's demographics are. There were a lot of strong feelings on the issues. There's probably no surprise to anybody. A lot of people couldn't attend the town meeting, due to the format or convenience issues. And then the voter preferences and priorities, they skew, by age group and by demographic, but a lot less, I think, than I would have expected. And, I think there's reason for optimism in the data too. So first, just a profile of the respondents. I found age to be like a useful demographic variable to look at. And so by age, at least, it's not exactly representative of the people in town, but it's fairly close. And when you consider that 20% of the respondents were blank, so we don't actually know their age, it's certainly within a reasonable approximation of what the town census data looks like. Now, I've grouped it into these sort of 3 large buckets, or 4 if you count blanks, but I think it's useful, at least, let's put it that way. We do see something in the data that I think is interesting and worth kind of considering, which is that in Southborough, if we consider these respondents representative of the town, there's a very inverted correlation between income and age, where younger income residents skew towards much higher incomes. And it shouldn't be surprising also that younger residents skew towards having, kids in school. And, the age and income that you typically see is that, the older you get, the more you tend to earn. But among Southborough residents, that seems to be kind of inverted. And that at least it makes the point that, like, the Southborough demographics are uniquely primed for this to be a divisive issue, right? The younger residents have kids in school, they can afford a more, expensive, option and have reason to prefer something that benefits the students or spends more money for more value, to say. And that's not an obvious point, I think, going in. So I want to start with that. A couple things that just on the basic responses about information sources. I put this in here partly because I think, the committee worked, I think, hard to try and get the message out about what they were doing, but it doesn't seem like the respondents to the survey, at least, did it like really got the message. The in-person and online meetings that they had were something that only a quarter of the respondents felt like they got their information from. And then on the question of how easy or difficult was it to interpret the details, you only had 42% in the top two, easy or very easy. And the free response section, there's a mix of some of it is outright confusion and some of it is distrust. And that I think I put this in here partly because I think that's useful advice to whatever the future committee is. And what's interesting also is that the voters were pretty committed, despite the overwhelming majority of them feeling that the details were not awesome to understand. They all felt like they had plenty of information to make a vote at town meeting, which is, again, I think probably suggestive of the division that people have sort of experienced. This is another point that I thought was pretty informative, that and I brought this up at the select board meeting a couple of weeks ago, but there's a huge difference between how people respond to the question of, would you reconsider the same proposal versus would you reconsider a modified version of the proposal? There's probably the word modified is doing a lot of work there, but that's a very striking difference. So, people are open-minded, but in some form, there's, discomfort with whatever was proposed. There's another big difference between the people who were able to attend the town meeting versus the vote. I found that to be a really striking difference. And, the people who said they couldn't attend the town meeting, again, probably not a whole lot of surprise there, but a lot of them said either schedule conflicts or childcare needs or inconvenience, which, are all sort of partly synonymous, I think. That jumped out at me in the data. And then, so the final points that this is really the point that I feel like deserves sort of the most time. That, again, I felt like the age group was a very good proxy for, the variable of division. And so this is the question of what are the priorities for the new school. And what I found was that, the way that people feel about the priorities, there is some skew by different age brackets, but really there's a lot more agreement about the priorities than disagreement. That the difference in, people who feel, for example, that the total cost or any of these, right? The difference between the percentage that put the top two boxes among, the under 50 group versus the over 50 group is rarely more than 10 or 15%. Right. And across questions, it varies by quite a bit more than that. So, I think the narrative that comes through to me is that, again, this probably shouldn't be a surprise, but that people want a good school option, but they're very concerned about the costs, right? Across the whole proportion, the cost is the one that has the largest number of people in the top two boxes on that question. But the other thing, priorities are important to people almost regardless of what demographic they are. Some of these are lower than others, like urgency, of course, that's a naturally time sensitive thing, so that is related to age. The preservation of existing schools does not seem to have a ton of salience, or the grade configuration. Yeah, so I just found that there was a lot more agreement than I expected across the age groups, especially given, again, the inversion of the income relationship. And then, so I think the other point that I think jumps out in this data is, so there is across the whole set of data, there was, I think, 171 people who didn't respond to the demographic questions, but a good number of those, about 8% of the total respondents for these priorities, they did respond. And that the blank group skews like uniquely cynical in this group. I don't know what that demographic represents really, but there's about 8% of the people who responded who are really concerned about costs, and that's about it. So I thought that was interesting. And then this, again, the same sort of thing jumps out at when looking at the interest in the 6 different options that were presented. I think that there's a lot of interest in what was presented as Plan B. There was, I think, a more interest than I thought there would be in a full NERI renovation, whereas the minimal NERI renovation was sort of, I thought, pretty close to the least liked overall. But again, to me at least, there's more agreement than disagreement. So yeah, that's the end of the slides that I presented. If you jump into any comments as well.
I think it tells it's the same story we told to the select board. There are, I think, some obvious candidates here that are not popular with at least the survey respondents, and some that are clearly popular. And then there's also a certain amount of middle ground. But this is what I will say is that when we did do the demographic analysis with the town census, I did it a little differently in that I looked at people who have children who are sort of ages 0 to 14. And that cohort represents about 31% of the households in the town. It's about. And the cohort that does not have children of middle school age or younger represents 69% of the households in town. And so I think it's important to focus on that 50 to 70 and 70 and older group, because you've got to address their concerns in order to get to 2/3 for any particular vote, which borrow money, you need 2/3. So I think that, but I think we'd be prepared to dig into more questions if you've got them, but I think this is a good summary. And I thank Mike for
Thank you very
his
much.
flashing
Happy to
fingers.
do it.
Thank you,
I appreciate the opportunity.
Are there any questions from the committee regarding survey?
I have a question. You started off with a comment around as expected. What was in your mind before you did this analysis? Because I'm not saying there was any prejudice in your analysis, but that implies you had your own hypothesis going into it. What was that?
So I tried not to, superimpose my own expectations. Do you remember exactly what I said was expected?
I think the results were different than as you
I
expected.
think I may have said that.
Well, I mean, again, the overarching narrative that people want a good school, but they're very concerned with the costs. That's everyone, so when people want something great, but well, how much is it going to cost, right? That's what to me is, and actually, I think most of this, other than the demographic, income and age inversion, that I was surprised to see. I didn't realize that, because that's, a very strong trend in the other direction in general.
That doesn't
data.
surprise me at all, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's really understandable, right? But just about everything else, I think, as I thought about it, I thought I'm not totally surprised by
No,
that.
I mean, your data, I think, just reinforces the narratives that I heard from folks that I had talked to.
Yeah,
And I say the people who are moved here newer, post-COVID, housing prices are amplified, right? Requires higher income, they're generally gonna be younger versus the folks who've lived 30 or 40 years.
yeah,
So your data just reinforces all those themes that I had personally heard. So thank you for the analysis, it's very thorough.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, again, I tried to keep my own
Yeah, I was
expectations
curious
out of it,
though,
but it's hard not to, you know?
I was curious your comment around what as expected, but
Yeah,
I didn't take it that you were manipulating the data.
No,
I was
no,
curious
it's
about
just
it a
that-
little bit.
well, you know.
I don't
you
think
know,
there were
be
any
careful about that.
surprises here in terms of, there was nothing that contradicted, you know, what we saw at town meeting
I
and
think it's
and
fine.
about it, you know, they all line up with sort of a consistent set of messages.
Thank you.
I'll make
Okay,
sure.
any other questions? Seeing none, let's move on.
Can the audience ask a question?
No.
Sure. Thank you. Just quickly, I believe you said preserving existing schools didn't shout out as a top priority for respondents. I took the survey, I don't remember. Did you break it out by school or was it just a general question that
It was a
said?
general option of
Okay,
how important is preserving it was, I think I said that the grade configuration is what had less interest than preserving the existing schools was still a 56% overall within the top two
you grouped those
boxes.
together just now in your remarks. You said
Yeah, I'm
preserving
sorry.
existing schools and avoiding transitions, not a huge priority for the respondent.
That's my mistake because those are different options with very clearly like different.
Could you just,
popular- Yeah,
I'm just curious about how many people were interested in preserving the existing school.
so the preserving the, so what's. I should reshare. Yeah. This is an important point, actually.
And to be clear, I'm not sure you said huge priority, but I got the impression they weren't big priorities. I'm not sure you used the word huge, but you did put the two together, just
Yeah.
to be clear.
So I don't know, I don't know if I can reshare, but
You
so
should be able to, I think you should for this purpose, so I think it's worth thinking about how to do it.
there we go. So the grade configuration, the importance of the grade configuration is more important to people younger with school age children than it is to folks who are 70 or older, but it's still overall only 50% of respondents, you know, consider that in one of their in the top two boxes of importance. The preserving the existing schools, on the other hand, has the alternative, like the opposite you know, skew. So the younger folks find that less important than older folks. So they're still sort of on the low end of overall importance.
And I can't see them.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. So what's the number for the younger demographic, preserving existing schools is?
47%.
Is this in the packet? I don't have to take up everybody's time if this is posted somewhere.
We'll have to send it to you anyway.
It'll be in the minutes.
Yeah, this is hot off the press, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So this will eventually make its way to a packet and posted somewhere.
So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
I had a good update on that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, thank you both
All right.
very much. All right, Tim, do you want to give your update on?
I'll start. So, I made some progress with, the town, administration that we can get. We have a website now for the information. The, matrix as of yesterday and the educational matrix as of yesterday, both the or and the educational column of that are posted on that website. I unfortunately don't have the link to it, but it's on the town website. If you can find it under the PreK thing. I haven't had a chance to look. I just got confirmation it is posted. So this survey results can go there as well. We have a consolidated spot for the. That was my quick update. You want to start with the matrix sharing next, or do you want to go someplace else?
No, I'd like to start it sharing the matrix.
Okay, I have it on my screen, so. Actually, I think it might be better to start the opposite way. Kelly, do you want to share the educational one first?
Sure.
I can give you permission to get out of it.
So again, this is gonna be available online, and this was just presented to the school committee last night. Biggest changes that were made, let me just pull up my notes. Option B2 was added, and that is, Finn is expanded and renovated to serve pre-K and to 2, and then Trotter is expanded and renovated to serve 5 to 8. So this has been added to our matrix and would be supported by both the district and the school committee. And again, this is just based off of educational impacts. That does not necessarily go into any of the complicated details of actually doing those renovations and what that would look like or cost. The school committee and district also looked into option H. We may not have the level of detail that was sussed out for some of these other options. However, they did go through and decide if it met the criteria. In an essence, option B2, C, D, E, F, and G all can be supported by the district and school committee and our educational considerations working group based on this information. In terms of if we could have what we dreamed of, obviously option D would be preferred, or option G, excuse me. However, based on the survey and what we're hearing from the community, option E would be the first choice then, and that would be the full ADA and current code compliant renovation of Leary.
Just for clarification, the school committee voted at that as a preferred option last night.
Yes.
Yes.
Based on that meeting, they also agreed that option B2 would be the lowest preferred option from the school committee and the district. And that is based on this would have a huge impact on 2 schools, construction, complications, and just in the fact that no money has been spent researching either of these options. So we don't quite know what is feasible and what's not. So that is.
Did you mean either of the Bs?
Yes, either of the B2. So with the expansion of pre-K 2 and Trotter 5 to 8, that would be the least preferable supported option based on that information.
And you said H from additions to Finn and Woodward would not be supported either.
It would not be supported.
I get one question, since you've got the bookends, what about the middle in terms of the ranks order?
So the school committee has not ranked order the supported options.
Okay.
It selected what it thought was its preferred option. There is some discussion by the school committee to could they prioritize? But I think looking at the survey data, looking at some of the information we have around what are the next what's the next step? What could the town support? E was the preferred option selected.
Let me ask it maybe a little bit differently. The B2 and D have similar flavors because you're affecting, and for example, are the conditions that would cause it to be less attractive? Could you apply those? I mean, I might try to force you into a corner. But as we think about this, I mean, clearly E is unique unto itself because it's an area alone. The other ones are flavors of the same themes. Do you think that the concerns that would be in one, like a B2, could also be applicable in the others as well?
So looking at B2.
Yeah, so for example, if you're looking at D where it's
So which ones do you want to compare? B,
Expanding Fin to even be bigger, so if they were
Yeah,
had
so
concerns
that-
around Fin and B2, would
yes,
have the same.
so
Same
so
thing.
option D, or option, sorry, my eyes are terrible.
Yeah, the colors a little tricky.
Kelly. you
D,
can make it
D
the
two
top
is,
option.
D two is only expanding.
So-
Fin,
So
Okay.
D,
Correct.
Yeah, D.
D.
so option D compared to option B2.
Well, I'm just trying to understand. If there were concerns, so you clearly put B2 on the low end. There are similar, like if you were gonna expand Fin, whether it's 2 grades or 1 grade, you've got to expand Fin, so
Yeah.
it's. Any concerns that come to mind, I assume would be
Yeah.
applicable in both situations.
I think I think the Fin site needs to be explored further for expansion. I think that exploration would need to take place in B2 and D,
Exactly.
and there are some unknowns. I think the appealing part of option D compared to B2 is, you would have 2 elementary schools. We would have the inverse of what was originally proposed.
Yeah, makes sense.
Reduce the
So
transition.
I'd like to just forecast, into the spring town meeting. And think about, are we gonna make is there gonna be a presentation made by the permanent pre-K to 8 building committee? And the select board and the school committee, since we're not hampered or hindered by MSBA regulations where you cannot anymore have more than one option, which was not the case when we did some of our other builds in Southborough and Algonquin. That, I think what I heard at town meeting very loudly and clearly is that the only option was this brand new Neary build, or we voted down. And I just would like to have people think, and I would enlist opinions, whether we should have more than one option presented at our next town meeting. And still state what the preferred option is, and then what's the next option that isn't preferred.
Can I just make a comment on that? So I think what was presented at the spring town meeting was following MSBA's process.
Yes,
So that we were working toward
yes,
preferred option to bring to, the voters at that meeting. I think that I think it was clear that people, in the survey data and other, at the town meeting saying we want some options to select one.
and that's what I'm saying, we're not hindered by their
Yeah.
process, which I really don't understand how they arrived at that some 25 years later, but I do think we could, if memory serves me correctly, we presented more than one option when we finally came back for Algonquin and people voted on the addition renovation.
I think the other critical piece here is this current state of Neary's roof and the fact that it does need some sort of repair if it's going to remain open. So we also need to consider how much money we're going to be investing in that, what that means.
Good point. As a school. As a school.
And I can provide an update on the roof. So at last night's school committee meeting, the school committee voted to remove the article for a new roof from the warrant article at the November, October fall town meeting. It took a different approach. We are going to use this facilities revolving account funds to fund a feasibility and schematic design. So out of that revolving account, we'll be able to do that work immediately. So we'll procure that, we'll hire a firm to do that work, do the study, get better information, paralleling that the select board and whatever new iteration of a committee can kind of talk about the pathways that we think are viable. We'll have a firm number of what the roof will cost at Neary. The assessment that we have now, the condition assessment and the roof report was done in May. So May till the Springtown meeting has a long time when it comes to cost changes. So we'll have a good cost estimate and leading right up to town meeting in the spring. And if the pathway is the right pathway, that will be at the Springtown meeting for a vote of the citizens.
if the town voted no, not to fund the roof in that meeting, would Mary remain open next?
It yes, we would have an unsound roof.
And there's no concern over the winter of 25, 26.
Yes.
I already knew the answer.
Yes, but we have a roof contractor who's on call.
Yeah.
We know where the hot spots are. We're not worried about the load.
Yeah.
Just it leaks.
Yeah, and there's, well, I can't predict what can happen with leaks, but
Yeah.
it's not gonna be good. So by pushing this out, to get better numbers, there's gonna be money spent for remediation over the winter.
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the past 5 years, what we've spent to, maintain the roof, to, repair leaks, hasn't been a significant amount of money.
Okay.
So in what the school committee did was ask us to determine if we ask for the funding at the fall town meeting versus the spring town meeting, what does that mean for the overall start of the project?
Yeah.
It's about a 2-month difference.
Right.
So we're not talking about a year. We're talking about from fall approval to a spring approval. It's about a 2-month window when we can start.
And is that, you still anticipate doing the roof next summer?
We would most likely start in August if all things,
And that can be done while students are in school?
yes,
This last major storm, was there noticeable water inside the building?
only in the known areas.
Okay.
No surprise.
I just was curious, if it's actually leaking into the
Yeah, we
building
did.
right now.
On Saturday, we did, after the storm, we did check, and
Sorry,
after every storm, we inspect our schools, and
okay,
no surprises. We did have leaks at Trotter though.
Is that gonna be put up forward soon?
Yeah, so Trotter, so we are partnering with MSBA in its accelerated repair program. So we're doing design and engineering with the goal of bringing that to the Springtown meeting.
Any other comments regarding the matrix? And the options as discussed? Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right. Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna sound like a broke, Betsy Road going past Strawberry Hill Road. Could someone please drop a footnote with a citation to the author and the date and the name? The document keeps changing and it gets confusing. Thank you. Sound like an English teacher, right? And I
Okay,
was.
duly noted. Can we please make sure we put the date on so we know which iteration we're looking at?
Thank you.
okay, Kelly, I'm still from you. Sorry, I got a lot of things open. One moment, please. There we go. That looks like the right. Okay. So this is the current V4 matrix, PK. That you're gonna ask me. 2.02 PK8 Research Committee Matrix V4. The same document we've been updating, all the iterations that had a date added to the prefix as we update it. It's the same matrix we keep updating. The one you see from yesterday is the 09. Sorry, 250910 version, which is the same as what you see right now. That's on the website that I just mentioned. A has gotten built out to a reasonable expectation. You guys can poke holes into this. I know that Mark and I were talking about soft and hard costs. So right now, we're still talking hard costs without soft costs included. So every single thing on this should have soft costs added into them, which will escalate every number that is represented on the screen. So that is work that has to be done after this meeting, before our next meeting. So with that being said, this is just an assumption. If Finn and what is this? Finn's PreK, Trotter and Woodward switch. So Woodward, instead of being 2 and 3, would become 7 and 8. Trotter would become 3 through 6. The assumption was 75% of the building would have to be renovated in some kind of way. At the renovation number we've identified as 525 from the previous documents in the 2024 information. So assuming that Woodward at 68,000 square feet, needing to touch 75% of the building, Trotter 130,000 square feet, touching 75% of the building. As a baseline of 2024 numbers, around a $78 million project, and then 4% inflation, you can see that how it increases from there. So that was the assumption to start, just to kind of get an idea of like what would it possibly cost to switch these buildings. And this is on the low side of even thinking about this option. And because we've all kind of moved away from this as a viable path, I really don't want to put a lot more time into building this out beyond what this assumption creates.
Agree.
So I filled in some of the details on the assumptions that we make, out of the minimum cost. And again, I didn't put a lot of extra information in here. I just sort of threw it into the executive summary, saying what level of assumption we'd be making here. I did split B1 and B2, so we officially have the B1, which would have been whatever would have gone to a town meeting. B2 would be the level beyond, or sorry, no, I'm on the wrong one here. We split B1 and B2 from the last conversation. So B1 was the no additions version of Trotter having 5 through 8 and Finn getting PreK to 2. So we split this one to 2. So the B1 is with no additions, B2 is with renovation and adding onto the building. B2 has a level of assumption in here too. I built on a little bit more off of the last conversation of renovating the existing building. I did an assumption of a light renovation be 15 to 25% of the square footage on the same sort of math above. So assuming that we would have to do both buildings at a light renovation, then you could kind of get an idea that the total cost of this would start somewhere around the $39 to $50 million project to build the school out and modify the existing rooms on 2024 baseline numbers, not with soft costs. So it's only going to go up from this estimation if this is what the projects would actually entail. All of these are assuming that we understand what the project would entail, but any sort of future work would have to have a consultant really look at everything that we're talking about doing. But at least I think this is a starting point of comparing costs on the same starting point. We know one will cost more than another one.
Can I ask what constitutes a light renovation?
It was just the idea that if we already have students in this building for those grades, we're not drastically changing anything. We might need to modify classrooms, door side or door locations, or some structures like that. So assuming that most of the building is fine, we might need to do some level of renovation to make the new use of the extra grade fit. So that was the assumption. We talked about it at the previous meeting about the level that the rest of the building might need to be touched. I think Trotter is a good example that there's sand currently in there. They would come out and then those rooms would have to be repurposed. So those sort of renovations that would have to happen to make sure the spaces would be good for classroom or curriculum uses again.
Would that also include adding additional restrooms in each of those buildings, or?
I mean, theoretically, you're talking about a percentage of the building, so off of the assumption that 525 square foot is within that parameter, you have essentially over 30 to 40,000 square feet of trotting that you would touch at 525 a square foot. So you have, give or take, $17 million to add bathrooms and new doors and do whatever you're gonna need to do to make the space functional and useful for the intended purpose.
And then the total square footage for each is, or for the additions is 9,000 square foot added to Finn. 7,200, which is much farther below what the district thought based on the other detailed implications. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I believe they were upwards of 12,000 for each building.
So the 4.07 number ended up with these two at the very bottom. So this came right off of 4.07, which you drew in the comparison. Somebody has a printout of it. Howard, do you have a printout of that document? The one with the math on it? Those documents, right? Is the bottom of that, Kelly, double check that for me. The bottom of that should say 7,200, 9,000 on the total square footage. Should be in the back of those, it's the second page.
Sorry.
That was the calculation from rooms that had no assigned space that we talked about. That's what you were using.
So is that the right number or is it the wrong number? 7,200 and 9,000.
It sounds right. I can pull up the document.
It says not inclusive of hallways, restrooms, etc.
Yeah, so the number here, the way that this is represented is 9,000 net square footage and 7,200 net square footage per building. Then it has a 1.5 grossing factor applied to it, which you can see right here on the screen. And that applies the bathrooms and the hallways that are part of it. So that's the grossing factor here at 1.5. It lands the total project around 24,300 square feet total of both buildings for an addition on only the classrooms that are pointed out. So if a cafeteria would have to get bigger or anything else like that would trickle down, that would have to be studied and looked at. But on the known deficiencies of space from a classroom standpoint, this is your starting point. I think I'm saying that as accurately as I can possibly say it, that, you know, this is the starting point, but there's more to look at. The cafeteria, is the gym big enough? Is the locker rooms, are there other things in the building that are all sufficient with the repurposed uses? For the modified uses.
And to be clear, this would assume a horizontal build out, not vertical.
Generally speaking, yes. My knowledge is that a horizontal build out and a vertical are around the same per square foot cost. You just have to demo the area that you build up. So you'd have to add on to it from that perspective.
And so there was a question from the last meeting where I did some follow up with both Keith Lavoy and Jason Malinowski around the condition of the Finn foundation as it relates to building. There's no formal analysis that was conducted. It was more anecdotal, and you probably remember this from your building days. There was some anecdotal work done, but once Finn was excluded because of the grade configuration from MSBA, and more work was done. But he's spot on. It's likely that it would have to demo the first floor in order to rebuild it and then build on top of it. So the dollar per square foot, from what Jason told me, is essentially the same, even though the construction mechanisms are different. So you'd be doubling the square footage. So it ends up, and there's the assumption, of course, around the Mooney Field, which would be, which is now listed in here that we're assessing with town council to understand how that could be overcome through the Article 97. Stay tuned for that. We don't have an answer yet from council.
Okay, so with this so far, does anybody find fault in the approach of the assessment? I know the soft costs are something we need to work out, but the approach is what I'm interested in.
No.
Mark?
As I understand it, you're just looking at a standalone 16,000 feet or whatever the gross up number is.
Yeah, the need is a hard number, 16,200 square feet identified for the space that's needed.
Okay.
And then add the grossing factor on top of that.
Now that I can get my hands on the update, I'll go through it and write up some notes.
Okay. So that being said, that was B. So C was also split. That was an update as well. There's the what was going to be the articles for town meeting on C1 And then the overall update for town or C2 was the deferred maintenance package that advisory reference from the Vertex report and some other documents. So that is what this one is. I think this one definitely needs to get sharpened because as I dive into this more, I don't really think that what the no vote was kind of listed as the part of the cost. I don't think that they're actually complete because I found the sprinkler update. This is not in the advisory numbers that we looked at for the town meeting vote and what the no vote on the calculator represented. But it was a $500,000 baseline to update all the sprinklers in that building or to add sprinklers to that building. 500,000 anecdotally sounds extremely low.
Yeah.
My expected cost of this is around 2 million. So it would be closer to 2, I think, as a starting point. And then you could probably put it with other projects and it could be more efficient if you can do multiple things at the same time, but you have to take all the ceilings down. So, or not all of them, but you definitely have to be in the ceiling for a lot of this. And then now you're touching the ceiling, and that's another cost on top of this. So there's a lot more to this than I think meets the eye. So I think this option is, it's shaky at best on what the costs represent.
My only thought is if we can do this for 6.7 million, let's do it.
That was my thought too before, so when I saw it in the past, but as I've been diving deeper into this and looking at where those numbers came from, I have more questions than I found answers to.
We know the roof alone is, between 3.5 and 4.25.
And it was 1.58 on this number, if I remember correctly. It could be wrong, but it was around 1.5. And then I found out some more details around that. And I think that was a single ply roof, not a double ply for longevity. So there's a bunch of detailed nuances that I was uncovering as I dove deeper into this one.
I think the best source for some of those is in that ESR document of last August. And I think it'll be the C1,
Yes.
which is the add renovate. But there's some,
So there's two, there's the base repair, which was option A1.
A1, I think, was back in the previous submission.
But A1 is closest to,
But there's some backup detail in there that will segregate out some of those costs.
Yeah, I was pulling a lot of this from 5.01 and page 7 had like a chart on it. So there was a schedule that was in there, and that's where a lot of these came from. 5.01 is the Vertex report. So I think that this one definitely needs another close look. And I already reached out to Andrew Pfaff about going through this in a little bit more detail. So he helped consolidate this the first time, so he's a natural starting point to keep going here.
Can I actually ask a question about that one?
Mhm.
One of the things that we have talked about in our working group is just the assumption that if the town does minimal renovation of Mary, i.e. the roof, this is strictly short term, and on the assumption that we will be also choosing some sort of long-term path to work towards.
Yeah, so that's in the consideration, so let's see. It's listed further out here. Oh, here it is. So lifespan is not explicitly stated on scope, but it's probably in the 10 to 15 year duration. You'd shore up the building, you would make everything ADA compliant, you meet whatever pieces of criteria we'd have to meet today. Knowing what the MSBA process has been from my perspective so far, that's a 6 to 10 year process before we finally get back into something. So this building is at least in a 10 to 15 year useful span from doing whatever we fund from this option. I mean, that's just the way it seems like it would go.
So could the ADA code and the sprinkler system both be added on top of the roof, or would that trigger?
So Greg has pointed me in the direction of information that I haven't had time to fully read, but it's expected that there's going to be triggers along the way here. I was I haven't read them all. I really want to read that document and trust what Greg told me, which says that once you do one thing, there's a domino effect of cost. What I read before was that the roof and the windows are excluded, but when you group that into a bigger project, or that's what Greg said, when you group it into a bigger project, that's when you trigger it. And I'd love to just reference the exact section that comes from, just for putting a bow on this, but
521 CMR section 3.
does that say explicitly that because it says the roof and windows are excluded? What I haven't finished reading is
You have to read down a couple of paragraphs where it talks about combined work. You
Okay.
also need to read down a little bit further where it talks about the 3-year look back for
Okay.
the amount of.
Yeah. So I'll go back and read that, but that's the piece that I need to understand better.
Make sure you're in the 10th edition.
Yeah.
That's what rules, you know.
Okay, so that's that part of it, but it's definitely in here for about the duration, expected lifespan of this option. Access denied. Let's see if this has come back in. I somehow got signed out. Signed back in, not on the screen.
The fiscal started. I was just saying, it's because the emergency system.
Okay, so let me share again.
Telling people in the room that there's a call in case there's
Right.
public safety training going on here. No, Santa Claus is not coming to bail you out.
Okay, so next option, if everybody's good on that C2 piece, is D. Which again, I added that assumption of what a light renovation would look like for a pre-K to 3. So this option, let me remind myself from where we started from, is assuming that 6 to 7 classrooms would have to be added 900 square feet each for a 16,650 net square foot range to fit. This is a big assumption because from the documents that you guys had before, there's other numbers there. Believe that one was 7,200 square feet on the last option, right? That was spin.
That's
So-
to add 1 grade. This is to add 2 grades.
Yeah, adding 2 grades. So assuming that 6 to 7 classrooms, okay, I remember now. 6 to 7 classrooms was in the NERI 4 grade learning districts. What do you call it?
Neighborhoods, yeah.
Neighborhoods, yeah. And that is 6 to 7 classroom space per neighborhood.
Each had 8.
8.
Okay,
It's
so
8.
these numbers are wrong. So I looked at the floor plan and I saw the ones labeled classrooms and I took it from the classrooms number. And so this should go up to 8 then, but it was taking 8 classrooms more plus the 7,200 square foot number that was already assumed, adding them together and then doing the same math, that the same formulas that have been happening to every other option. So that was how this was derived.
It wouldn't, the only thing, I mean, it wouldn't take into account things like the expansion of English language development, special education, specials, like what might have served 3 grades. Now scheduling wise wouldn't, so I would imagine there's more than just 8 classrooms.
Okay, so the assumption was thinking that what was added to support the 3 grades would be sufficient to do 4. So that was the assumption when I started putting this together. It was a big assumption.
Okay.
So like that was kind of what I was asking you before about Greg, was like if we had an idea here to sharpen this one. So if there is a better way to represent this and say 8 classrooms plus from the 7,200, how much more another grade would consume, it'd be much easier to get this number a little bit sharper. So if that's something that you guys do.
So we did study adding 2 grades to Woodward during the process. I would use the number for that addition. So that is what, in essence, what you'd be adding on to Finn. And I can send you that spreadsheet.
Okay,
I have a question. That would be in the PDP of last May. That option, all detailed.
so that was probably 9.09. I've been living in the prefixes we assigned everything in that
And I
chart.
have no clue what they are, so
Yeah,
let's
so
just
I'm-
going back to the actual document.
Yeah, I've just been living within that because I've
Yep.
been trying to sort it through. That's why everything here has a reference back to those. But yeah, okay, so if we can just get maybe, Greg, that can be something you guys can send, is just clarity on what this option should really look like. It'd be much easier to not make major assumptions like I did.
Just a real quick, we're using all of Neary Building Committee data to generate our numbers for these
Yeah.
options.
Or MSBA guidelines.
But now we're switching from 6 to 7 to 8. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we're gonna have to do that.
What do you mean,
For the new building too?
We said that we're getting 6 to 7 to 8.
Well, you assumed 6 to 7 classrooms at 900 square feet.
Yep.
And I just heard the
Yeah.
school committee said they gotta go to 8.
Yep.
So that would mean that the $108 million new school would be bigger too.
No, that,
Yeah,
That
that
had
had
it.
8.
That had it.
That had 8.
Yeah, I somehow miscounted.
Okay,
I looked at
sorry.
the floor plan and I assumed, I think I only looked at things labeled classrooms
Okay,
and not the rest of the neighborhood picture, assuming they were shared spaces.
okay. No problem.
So I think it was just me looking at nomenclature.
Sure, no problem.
Okay, so that's what that option looks like. Any questions about this one right now? Clearly more work to do here. Okay, so this one's an interesting one to look at. Nothing's been done from here, but going back and looking at base repair costs and renovation costs. There's two different numbers to look at from the NBC documents, which are on page 9.05, starting at page 667. I need to go back and sharpen this one up. This was something I learned today, that these numbers may not be the most representative. They just need to be looked at again, but this was listed as a base repair of A1 in the documents, and with what we're currently talking about, this one may not cover everything that we were talking about. So again, I just need to go back to the source and kind of ask somebody that was there some more questions. But this is what was A1 in that reference. New 4th grade, we have clear numbers here. And nothing has been done to G since the last meeting. So again, we're just taking what the new 4th grade was, dividing that by 4, multiplying that to get the 6th grades. So took a 99,000 square foot, almost 100,000 square foot building, divided that into 4 grades, 25,000 a piece, and then said, okay, we're gonna need around 156,000 or so to do a new school with 2 more grades. So just general math to get to a reasonable base point.
And H, you're saying, even if they're permanent additions, H would not be supported.
So making modulars permanent.
No,
So
no,
that's what,
no,
that was what, listed.
adding additions to each building
So that was,
to suit your needs.
yeah, so there were 2. Yeah, that was B2. That was supported by this book.
I'm talking about H.
But H, the way it's listed, it's adding modulars and making permanent. But that might not be,
What, I'm sorry, what I suggested, Tim, was we have an H and an H1. When you do your modulars, you clearly have to do a lot of things to make it work in the short term.
Mhm.
If you were to put permanent additions in this configuration, I was curious what that number would be.
I think
When we're seeing these numbers now, it may be different.
so we just looked at, H1, we didn't actually do same level of analysis around how much space we would need as we did with the others. We would have to do some more work.
Right, I asked to add this because I thought not touching Cartier was a good thing. And it didn't have any problem with a 5th grade. Other than the unknowns of putting another grade here at Hillsborough, it seemed like an option. I didn't say it was a good one or a bad one.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if that's something we can, if you potentially look at that.
I guess the same math would apply to the other option we were kind of just talking about,
Okay.
which was the
Generic, yeah.
the D option, right? About how many classrooms plus how many support pieces get a total square foot and then multiply that by whatever
Sure.
hard and soft costs we agree on for a per
Right.
square foot cost. And then that would just give us a general idea. We're still, and then we'd have to also list on that option space constraints, where would it, next to the.
Understood.
field and stuff.
Understood, yeah, I mean, I've got thoughts, but it's too premature of that.
And again, it's basically taking the work we did with MSBA, add in addition to Woodward, which we studied, instead of being 2 floors. We were adding A grade, it would be a floor. So it's, the calculations are there.
And just to, I might as well play my cards early. There's no reason why it couldn't be a second floor addition open.
At
That's just an assumption.
Then,
Say what? Say that again? There's no way.
In back of Woodward, where it's
just,
totally open.
Yeah.
I know there's some constraints of the fire hydrant, but, and there's a big cliff.
Yeah.
But, anything's feasible if you give somebody,
Are you saying just have like a an open bottom floor to it and it would just be coming off?
again, it's just pie in the sky thought.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
not
I'm just
I'm
trying
not
to follow-
designing it,
Just trying
but
to follow
when I
everything.
looked at it, when we looked at the buildings, I saw this big open space. I saw a potential for a retaining wall. And if you want to retain some semblance of a courtyard, all the new rooms could be on the second level only with connectors or however you want to do it. It's just
Over the playground?
Pardon?
Over the playground, so.
so I think. what I'll-
no, in back of the building. Is that, are you calling that a playground? The
Yeah,
playground's at the
That's
end,
where
I
kids
thought.
have recess. That's,
So
that's where the kids.
That's
go
the
for recess.
blacktop where they go,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, it could be over the
Yeah.
playground.
I think with,
Not making it totally, it could create a courtyard.
Yeah. I think all of these, and I'm stating the obvious.
Yeah.
And all of the options that kind of, meet the educational design are, and our estimated costs. If the select board narrows it down to 3, then the real work begins.
Sure.
Of like,
Sure.
okay,
without
what
doubt.
does this look like?
Without
What are
a
the
doubt.
details of this? And, so I think that is.
Yeah.
That is a possibility.
But we can develop a number now.
Yeah.
For that, whether it's feasible,
Within the same constraints of the rest, so at the
Sure.
end of the day, you can at least see is. Should this cost a lot of money compared to this option,
Right.
or are they similar in weight off of our base assumptions?
As a test to your number, I can point you to various school projects right now that are in MSBA with bid numbers. To give you where that range is. So if there's an iteration where you're adding and coming out with a 4-grade school or a 5-grade school, there's some projects I can point you toward that's gonna give you a per square foot cost that's been bid out and ready to go. And that'll give you at least a range that you're gonna target.
We should, I'm trying to live off the documents we've had and modify them as little as possible. And then we should definitely apply that to a current project today, just to have a known quantity if it should add up. And I think we should do all that work and have it together. I just want to make sure that we're trying to point to, we paid consultants before, let's start with a number that we feel pretty confident in. So that's my updates on, they were built.
One quick note, if I can. On the matrix, there's a column for valuation.
Yeah,
It's probably the first time in public I've said this. I'm a classified expert witness in Commonwealth of Massachusetts on land valuations at district court level. I'm also a trained appraiser. I'll do up some verbiage and point to some appraisal work that's been done. The problem that you're looking at Finn is that you're correlating value of a house to its location to a school. But it's complicated by the fact you've got a large recreational area there. So I'm gonna give you two correlations. And it's more of an opinion based on where I see all these appraisals going. And just give you some basic information so that you can fill that out.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it's just, I mean, there's some just strong inferences here.
Yeah.
So. Any sort of detail would probably be well received in this category. So, any other questions about this part?
I have none. Anyone else? Eric?
No.
Nobody.
No.
All right, is there any other business?
Yeah, I have something. We kind of need to land somewhere. Our charge expires soon. So we kind of need to have
19 days.
an end game for what are we gonna do? And then what do we do with this information? So I talked with Andrew Dennington about possibly being at the select board meeting. Next one's on Tuesday, too early for us. The one after that's October 7th. So the idea of possibly asking for like a 2-week extension to the charge. To have enough time to put together kind of a report by the end of the month or final cleanup of all these documents. And then do a joint meeting with the select board to present this information. And answer questions about what we've done. So. I don't know what anybody's feelings are about possibly asking for that extension for 2 weeks for time. Or if you have a different thought that we can ask Andrew and see what the select board might want to do at the next meeting on Tuesday, but we should kind of. Think about how we wrapping this up.
Howard?
I was gonna ask you for a month extension tonight. And I don't think. We've progressed and you've done the bulk of the work and I
I would say I
appreciate
did
it.
the bulk of it. I
You've
did,
done it all.
I did a piece of it,
Well,
school committee
but
and
you-
other people did a lot too, but I mean,
I
I
will
did a
freely
piece.
admit I'll never be able to figure it one drive, so I'm not gonna get much help. But I would think maybe we should ask for a month extension. I think it's important. Well, first of all, I think if we're gonna meet together with the selectmen, they have to have our information for a minimum of a week.
Yeah.
Adjust it and have questions. And then we're gonna have to regroup and fix those, anything, the questions come up. If you feel confident we can do it with a 2-week extension, we can go for it and then 3 weeks into it, which.
I don't know if there'd be appetite to do more than 2 more weeks. I think that
Okay.
we need to get to a point. Personally, we need to get to a point where this information is put together as we reasonably can get. We are only gonna be able to take it so far.
Sure.
Somebody else is gonna have to pick this up.
Yeah.
So the sooner we can hand off, the better off we are in general. So I don't really personally want to give us a lot more time to do a lot of extra fiddling with what we have information of, because we can only manipulate it so much.
Sure.
Somebody else has to pick this up.
So Tuesday, you want to ask for the extension?
I would like to go back and ask for it if the committee feels that we can meet that. Get onto the agenda for the October 7th.
Okay,
We'd have to get permission to get onto the agenda for that, and then we'd have to be comfortable by the end of this month to have this document pretty much locked down, cleaned up, the educational matrix locked down, cleaned up for all of this to work in.
so my take is. When you have your select board meeting this coming Tuesday. Exactly what do they want from us? How do they want this information presented? I mean, I can see it just being a handoff.
I see
I
it as a
think-
handoff.
Okay,
But
and I just,
But they-
I don't wanna be involved in a formal slide deck presentation of what we've done.
I think that what we just did for this meeting is more than sufficient to walk through this information. We just need
I
to
would
go
agree with
through
you.
and make sure that the matrix, the educational matrix is, cleaned up, organized, titled. apply like wrapping and whatever else to the column, just make it look like it's functional and finished. Same sort of things, numbers have to get cleaned up a bit more with soft costs. Need to add in a couple extra numbers that we need to get for building square footages, feel more confident in how they were derived. And then once that's done, I see this as, that's what we do. Anything else, we need maybe a paragraph explaining kind of what we went through, so anybody that looks at this later can see that doesn't see the meeting, it's all together. That's about as far as I see us making what we're doing right now.
I would, as a minimum, I would encourage the select board to know exactly where to find these two. The heat up and the matrix.
Well, luckily it's on the town website now, so at least we got that going for us.
But I mean, just so they're clear where they can find it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's the most important thing. And of course, we talked earlier about disseminating information. That's probably the hardest part. I don't know if that's up to the select board. You know,
Disseminating information for what
well,
down the road,
well,
future, what the recommendations are
would
gonna
we
be.
be making copies that are readable to the public before the selectmen?
I mean, we could be in the packet, so that's why I'm saying the end of this month, end of September, when our charge would expire naturally.
Yeah.
We should have everything cleaned up and together. The only reason we'd have the extension is to get in front of the select board
And then,
to be able to show them the data, and if we need to, then we have a little bit of time left to kind of clean up
Understood.
any questions. Theoretically, the end of that meeting should be when we're done.
right, but
You know.
is there a way for us to disseminate at least these two pieces of information at the end of the month? To, you know, town library, you know, the school, well, the school, I don't know about the school, you probably can't, I don't know if you can.
I would be careful about exactly where we say it should go, but it's gonna be posted, it's gonna be available, it's gonna be. We wanna have hard copies of like the printed handouts here when we're comfortable with it, then, yeah, by all means.
Being a senior, not all seniors would even know how to figure out how to go and get them posted.
I think that we can just ask the town hall just to have a couple copies on a desk there, that if people want a hard copy of this, they can stop in and pick up.
So could we make some extra copies and put them at the senior center?
I think just my opinion, senior center, library, and town hall is a minimum. Because a lot of the seniors don't even know how to turn a computer
I
on.
mean, if somebody wants to own the locations of that, I'm all for it. I mean, I'm happy to,
Like get the.
I'm happy to say, I'm happy to agree to it.
Howard's gonna take that
I'm a
on.
frequent flyer there. I
Okay,
can
so
take care of the senior center.
When we're done with with where we land, hopefully at the end of the month.
Sure.
Then, because the next thing is to talk about the next meeting, but if we're happy with where we land, I'm all for
Yeah.
the version that we say we're comfortable with, and we don't need to make changes at that point. The print it and send it out, because until then, it's a live living document that has changes done to it
Correct.
very frequently.
Then what I would say is, one, we're really talking about some final data points. The themes are not gonna change. The feedback that we've just received, those things are pretty concrete. So I think end of month is a great line to put in the sand, get the 2-week extension, like, to give the select board meeting time to do that. But this thing is not gonna change dramatically over the next 3 weeks, other than a few data points.
The numbers.
The numbers, yes,
The
but-
numbers that are there are
But
great.
the underlying themes, yes, but we know the numbers are wrong anyway, because they're gonna have to get
I
reevaluated.
know,
But
I just want to make sure that we're not misrepresenting things that we clearly can fix, like soft costs.
We've got 3 weeks to do it. I'm
Yeah.
not disagreeing with you at all. I'm
Yeah.
saying is that the underlying themes around each option, other than the numbers, I think aren't gonna change.
I have a question. Is it possible to share this information without any sort of vote at the fall town meeting so that we have more viewers?
I think that that's a thing we could ask the select board if they would be willing to print handouts of this and have it available.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it comes down to what their faith in what we have and how it represents and how the school committee feels about the accuracy of what we have within this. I mean, we all feel like we've been vetting this. As long as it's agreed upon, which is a big thing of the October 7th meeting date, right? You know, people asking questions and saying, do they agree with how we come to where we are?
And we're still not, as a committee, offering an opinion around options.
we should not offer our opinion around the options. We should be as unbiased as we can to make sure that they're all vetted as equally as we possibly can.
Can someone give me the date of the October? Town meeting?
27. And it's that Charlotte here. Tim knows all the answers.
7 P.M.
Or did they do 6:30? I think it's a little earlier. Because the first half hour was like mainly details, and then the first article hits around 7. I'm sure I'll be there very early, so it doesn't matter to me.
Want to spend the night? All right, so scheduling of future meetings. Pencil October 7th. For select board meeting. Presentation.
Yes, or we're no on Tuesday for sure, but pencil it, put it in the calendar as a placeholder and market confirmation.
And so no need to schedule any other meetings of this committee.
We probably should meet again, to go over the numbers that I'm gonna have to update and whatnot, so we should at least have. One more meeting. Unless people feel they need more than one.
Comfortable with one.
Time. I never have enough time. If you guys look at my emails, they come between 12 midnight and 2 in the morning, so that's when I do all this.
So. Do you want to do Thursday, October 2nd?
Well, we don't know,
We,
we don't know if we're gonna have that extension yet, so I would suggest that we meet before, within the month of September. Yeah. I really don't wanna do the 30th, I kind of think the 30th makes the most sense.
We do the 29th, the Monday. September 29th.
Reason not to.
I can do that night.
I work calendar, or I agree anything.
29th, Monday.
Oh, okay, with the 29th or the 30th.
Son's having surgery on the 30th, so I prefer the 29th.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
6th, Monday the 29th.
Okay,
So you want to do 6:30 instead of 7?
I like 7.
I like 6:30.
I like 7.
Who likes 7 down here?
7.
7. All right, I'm overruled.
Okay. That should be free. I just wanna make sure we can get the room too, or we confirm this.
We want to do a rough draft of minutes and send to you, because I took some notes.
Okay, I'll double check the rooms available, but I'll do that after we're done.
Okay. So, any motion to adjourn
So
today's
moved.
meeting? Yes. A second? Kelly? Yeah.
No, we're all here, so we just have to. vote.
Who made the motion?
I moved it.
Tim moved it,
Tim moved it.
and then Kelly seconded.
And then I say yes, we should adjourn.
Okay, it's so adjourned. 8:23.
How do you?